We're here at the entrance of the headquarters of the United Nations in New York City. The first thing you see when you enter this building is an exhibit about Gaza. And the striking thing about this text is that it doesn't mention three things. It doesn't mention Hamas, which is ruling Gaza and has been ruling Gaza since 2006. It doesn't mention the October 7th massacre that sparked the Israel-Hamas war. And it doesn't have one single mention of the 101 remaining hostages held in the hands of Hamas since October 7th. This is a shocking exhibit that just reflects the policies of the many countries represented here to attack the state of Israel and perpetually question its existence. My name is Stefan Tompson. I'm the founder of Visegrad24, and I'm here in New York City at the United Nations headquarters, no less, with Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon.
Thank you for coming.
What's it like being the representative of the state that has the most resolutions passed against it in the history of the United Nations?
Well, this building is a very hostile ground for the Israeli ambassador. I served you already for between 2015 to 2020, so I knew what I was coming back to. But now during the war, it's beyond imagination. The amount of hate, and not only from the usual suspect, it's not only the Palestinian delegation or some of the Arab countries. You see European countries, Ireland, Norway, they wake up every morning and they think what they can do against Israel. We are not shy, we are not afraid, but it is very intense, and we are a very small team. And we are fighting hundreds of people who are here in order to attack Israel. I call it diplomatic terrorism. That's what we are facing today.
Do you think that the purpose that the United Nations was initially supposed to serve is still being served, or it has been fully hijacked by hostile forces and enemical states to the West?
Well, the idea was a good idea. And Israel is a full member state of the United Nations. But unfortunately, as you mentioned, Stefan, it was hijacked. And today when you look at what they are doing here, instead of promoting peace, they are promoting hate. They are hugging terrorists. They are providing funds for UNRWA, for example, which for years allowed Hamas to infiltrate this organization. So I think it's about time to reform the organization. I think there is still a place for the United Nations, but not the way they function today.
Why do you think that Israel, which is such a tiny country and a tiny group of people, why do you think it draws so much attention to itself in the United Nations? Why do you think that the Israeli state is the one that is the focus of so many attacks?
Well, first, I'm not against criticism. It is legitimate to criticize Israel, but it's not legitimate to have double standards. And that's what we are seeing. Look at the other areas of conflict around the world, whether it's Syria or Yemen, Afghanistan, Ukraine. The way they treat the conflicts is completely different. But when it comes to Israel, they use different standards. And when that happens, that goes under the definition of anti-Semitism. When you apply different standards to the only Jewish state, there is a problem there.
We saw the passing of the Abraham Accords a few years ago, which is a major breakthrough in Middle Eastern relations. But there's still numerous majority Muslim countries that are deeply, deeply inimical to the state of Israel, to the very existence of the state of Israel and to the Jewish people. Do you think that that can be overcome over the coming years, or do you think that this is a rivalry that will exist forever? Do you think there is a solution to the conflict that you have in the Middle East?
I'm optimistic about that, because most of the Muslim countries, we have some kind of a relationship with them. We work with them. And the Abraham Accords proved it, that they benefited a lot, and so do we. And I think some of the Muslim countries, they acknowledge that they want to do things with us, but they are afraid to do it. But when you speak with them one-on-one, you understand that we have a lot in common. We have common enemies, common threats. Radical Islam is not a threat for the Jewish people in the Middle East. It's first of all a threat to the majority of the Muslims in the Middle East. You see how many Muslims are being killed by radical Muslims. So they are afraid from those radical ideas, and I think we will cooperate with them. I'm optimistic about that.
One of the surprising things that we are seeing are the attacks from European countries against Israel. And we're seeing that from Norway, we're seeing that from the socialist government in Spain, we're seeing that from Ireland. I think those are the three most prominent players in Europe that are very pro-Palestinian and very anti-Israeli. To what extent do you think that shifting demographics in Europe have contributed to some of the changes in policy from Western countries towards Israel?
I'm sure it has to do with domestic politics. And by the way, they are not helping the Palestinians. On the contrary, You know, they think that they hug them and give them an umbrella here at the UN, and instead of pushing them to reject terrorism, to distinct the Palestinian Authority from Hamas, they are not doing that. You know, no one condemned the atrocities of October 7th in this building. That was shameful. No one actually called for the release of the hostages. That is also shameful. So I think those European countries, they are not supporting the Palestinians. Maybe they feel good about it, but on the ground, they are actually hurting the Palestinians.
The foreign minister of the UAE a few years ago, His Excellency Sheikh bin Zayed, warned that there would come a time when there are more radicals, Islamist radicals, coming out of Europe than out of the Middle East. Do you think that this is something that is slowly but surely becoming a reality?
Well, you know, I'm not interfering in the domestic issues of those European countries, but I can tell you that not only for Jews, for many people it's becoming not pleasant and not safe to travel in different areas. And I think, you know, there's one thing which is freedom of speech, but in some of the capitals of Europe today, you know, it is not freedom of speech. You know, you see violence, you see riots. Today it's against the Jews. Tomorrow it will be against the normal citizens who live in those places.
The three most prominent enemies of the West over the last few decades have been obviously the Russian Federation in various iterations, be it the Soviet Union and then the Russian Federation, the Communist Party of China, and the Islamists in Tehran. One of the lesser known enemies are the Qataris, the Wahhabis that rule the small Gulf country. We happen to be sitting in the space in the United Nations that was gifted by the Qataris. What role do you think Qatar plays in the lack of in the destabilization of the Middle East and in the fermentation of Islamism in the West?
Well, the Qataris always like to be involved, but they have to make a choice if they want to be affiliated with the Western civilization, with the United States and European countries, or they want to be affiliated with the radicals, which are Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranian regime. I think the time will come very soon that they will not be able to play that game and enjoy the benefits of both worlds. You know, as you mentioned, you see that you have the axis that is fighting against the democracies. You know, we have seen an attempt to assassinate the President of the United States, attempt to assassinate the Prime Minister of Israel. It's all coming from one source. So I think very soon Qatar will have to make a choice.
Iran and the Islamists in Tehran have been funding multiple organizations around the Middle East, destabilizing it to the best of their ability, waging a proxy war with you. Your war is not so much against just Hamas, but against all of these allies of Iran. What are some constructive steps that Western countries can take to help diffuse that situation and to help stabilize the Middle East?
Well, I think we have to address the main problem, which is the regime in Tehran. You know, we are dealing with their proxies, and I think we proved our capabilities, both against Hezbollah and against Hamas and against the Houthis, but it's not enough. At the end of the day, if Iran will continue to fund those proxies, they will continue to grow and pose a threat not only to Israel. Look what's happening today with the Houthis. You know, a small terrorist organization which is being funded by Iran changed the reality of maritime trade. Today we all pay more for products because vessels cannot use the Red Sea. The Suez Canal is not functioning because of the Houthis. So I think we have to realize it will affect everyone around the world if we will not deal with those proxies. And in order to deal with them, we have to go to the one who is funding them, which is the regime in Tehran.
Assuming your enemies succeeded and Israel disappeared off the map of the world, do you think that the United Nations, the countries in the United Nations that are so focused with passing resolutions against Israel every other day, with attacking you and with focusing on you, who would they focus on next if it wasn't Israel?
Well, first, it will not happen. I have news for them. Those who are praying or wishing us to disappear, we are here to stay. We are not in the hands of anyone. You know, the days when Jewish blood was cheap are over. The days when we needed favors from the United Nations are over. Today we have our own state, our own military, and we are capable to defend ourselves. But you know, I can tell you that. Look what's happening around us. When those radical organizations are not fighting us, they are fighting among themselves. Look at what's happening today in Syria, for example, in Lebanon. So they will keep fighting, unfortunately. Some of them are savages. They don't have a culture of civilization, and they will continue to fight among themselves.
What message do you have for European and Western countries that are choosing to be weak in the face of barbarism and terror?
Wake up. Wake up. You have to wake up. You know, you think it's not in your backyard, it's already in your backyard. You know, if you don't face radical ideas, they will get to your doorstep. We know it because we are in the front line, but today we have seen radical Islam in Europe, in the United States, all over the world, and I hope that they will do it as soon as possible.
Danny Danon, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I
Thank
wish
you
all
very
the best.
much. It's the first time we are doing an interview here in the United Nations. I hope it's not the last time.